do you make of China's move?
No, thanks for having me. Look, this is part of a very long trajectory in regulating the sector that kicked off back in 2017 in what was known as the sort of ICO ban at the time, and quickly moving through looking at the ecosystem as a whole. And really, this is the story of governments worldwide trying to figure out how they grapple with new technologies. And every market across the world, and APAC is such a good example, is taking a different approach to this. But the key message is this is a continuation of the same themes we've seen, and is really providing a lot of much needed clarity and certainty to the market, and is not necessarily news for those who have been seeking to comply in the first place.
The thing is, Ursula, can regulators, can governments ban cryptos?
Look, there are some very practical realities around implementing bans. And even if we look at the implementation of regulation generally, it becomes incredibly difficult in online environments where the question of territorial reach of regulation and enforcement becomes extremely challenging. And this is where we see some interesting approaches emerging in relation to how it is that we regulate activities that emerge from other jurisdictions. And what we're seeing really is an attempt in this case to come down quite hard across the entire ecosystem. So right from the generation of new assets in relation to the mining controls that have various reasons, including concerns around carbon, but also extend to the use of those assets within transactions. And that's why it's so critical that this announcement that came through on Friday is not just about platforms, it's not just around services, it also calls into question the potential enforceability of transactions that involve cryptocurrencies.
But how much, Ursula, of this is also down to their plans to have a digital yuan here? They don't want to have a competing currency, which the proponents of that currency, i.e. Bitcoin, also regarded as being fiat.
Well, of course, and what we're seeing worldwide is that money is becoming competitive. And what I mean by that is that value of its creation, its transfer, its application in various ecosystems is becoming competitive. And so when we look at the various initiatives, whether it's cross-border payments, whether it's CBDCs in a particular market, cross-border CBDCs, as we see in places like Hong Kong, that landscape is dramatically shifting. And so, of course, if you have a jurisdiction that is looking to implement at scale a currency that is used in a digital context, that is used through adoption, that encourages use, that encourages cleanliness of use as well, that will, of course, be one of the drivers for implementing controls over competitor value transfer mechanisms. But what that also signals is that there are these very idiosyncratic drivers of these particular reforms and changes and ongoing developments in mainland China that will be different for other markets. So we tend to see the most restrictive markets being those that do have capital controls, that do have other initiatives. Whereas on the flip side, we have other markets throughout Asia that are embracing the sector, that are recognizing perhaps the need for diversity in the value ecosystem, that are recognizing the potential role for these assets within wealth management solutions to provide that sort of suite of available products and services. So while the drivers may be such in mainland China, they look and feel very different in other markets.
Yeah, Ursula, I mean, you throw up so many interesting ideas here that one could even ask something so ephemeral as, well, what is money ultimately? But I don't want to go there because we'll probably be here all day if we do. But it's not, I mean, you've alluded to this, it's not new what they've announced. They've sort of codified it, haven't they? And at the same time as doing that, they're not against the principle underlying blockchain, are they? They want to encourage that. It's a tough one, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And if we see the initiatives that the mainland has championed, and that includes through the network that is being created that draws in really interesting blockchain developments from global participants, not just homegrown ones. You know, that story of blockchain innovation within its own organizations, within these networks, really speaks to the embrace of the technology as a whole, but perhaps not looking at the particular application or preferring, a different trajectory of its application. So, that you're quite right, that this is consistent with the message we've seen since 2017. We can see that's reflected in this not being as quite a bigger shock to the markets as it perhaps was back in 2017. And each successive announcement really just provides additional clarity around where, in fact, the regulators are standing in respect of the precise activities they will allow onshore, but also cross-border from offshore, which is important.